Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Alumni Talks, a very special episode. Today, we are going to be talking about human trafficking. And if you've joined us for the live show or you found us on YouTube later, thank you so much for joining us. The fact that you're joining us means that you, like our panel today, our speakers today, and I are all very, very passionate about this topic, human trafficking. We're all concerned about slavery, exploitation of workers, sex trafficking. There are so many different components that are all part of what we call human trafficking. I want to alert you to the fact that the US government cares very deeply about this topic. So much that every year we put out a report. It's called the Trafficking in Persons Report. And we'll be sure to have a link in the description of this video below so you can check it out. It is an amazing report, so much useful information about what is happening around the world. If you are passionate about this topic, I highly encourage you to read that report. I look at it every year. I always learn new things. I'm always inspired. I'm always wanting to do more and work harder on this very important issue. And that's why I wanted our two very special guests to join us today to discuss this topic. So I'm going to let each of our guests introduce ourselves. Let's start with our guest from Indonesia, Anis. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, thank you, Jason. I'm Anis Hidayah. I'm working for migrant care in Indonesia. I'm alumni of YSEALI 2006 on human trafficking. Thank you.
Thank you, Anis, and we'll be talking a lot more over the course of this hour. I know you have a lot to share with us. And our other guest also has a lot to share. Sue, please introduce yourself to our audience.
Hi, thanks, Jason. My name is Sue Sharon. I'm from Project Liberate, and I'm an alumni for YSEALI.
Thank you so much. Thank you. All right, and now both of our speakers will be making a presentation, and then afterwards we're going to have a lot of time for questions and answers. I have plenty of questions to ask, but I'm sure you in the audience have questions as well. So if you do, please, at any time, you can put your questions into the chat box and I will share those questions with our speakers. But let's go to our presentations first. Let's start with Anis.
Thank you again, Jason. I will start from how actually happening with Indonesian migrant workers during COVID-19, of course, including what happened with trafficking in person to them. Next. This is a very common information around the world. Of course, so many migrant workers impacted by COVID, including from Indonesia, because we are sending countries that happening in Southeast Asia and another region. They are going back to the origin country, like us in Indonesia. Next. For special from Indonesia, this is the data actually official data, but of course more than this number, what happening with Indonesian migrant workers during COVID, they are failed to be placed abroad because of COVID in Indonesia happening in March last year. Of course, also termination of the employment. Then seafarers also repatriated from many countries, destination countries, also positive COVID around the world, totally almost 300,000, but our calculation maybe around 1 million, about 1 million Indonesian migrant workers impacted by COVID. So they lost their job and then sending back to Indonesia, and it be so worse because jobless and etc. The economic situation is so down in Indonesia because of COVID. And Indonesian government, next. Indonesian government actually make the moratorium of placement since March until August last year, but then we are reopening to 13 countries in August until December last year, but actually Indonesia targeted more than 88,000 migrant workers. But of course, this is not happening because in many destination countries still very restriction how they are receiving migrant workers from another country. And then in January this year, we make the new policy, reopening to 21 countries of the destination, of course with health protocol, but the challenging is so big with this regulation. Next. What happening during pandemic? So many survey research about the situation of migrant workers, including Indonesian migrant workers during pandemic. This is the SBMI survey last year. About 54% of Indonesian migrant workers in the factory and construction sector do not earn in salary in Malaysia and Saudi. And then in Singapore, in Hong Kong, also they are working and earning a salary, they get double workloads, restriction on mobilization, deprivation of the day of rights, depression, and do not get overtime pay. This is so common what happened with migrant workers, also the workers in Indonesia. And migrant workers also in Taiwan and South Korea are not allowed to leave their homes or dormitories, so they start to face psychological problem. This is also happening with all of us, right? Because we are working from home until now. Next. And the other side, how the syndicate of the trafficking intensively, we call intensively recruiting people, recruiting victim from the origin area in Indonesia. We identify there are around 12 provinces in Indonesia that so many victim coming from. So we facing national economic decline because of pandemic, and then how syndicate of the trafficking using this situation, mostly they use social media to recruiting people. In other side, our government, of course, concerned about the pandemic, not only concerned about this issue. So it's really what happened in the social media every day, like migrant care, we are receiving so many reports about this situation. Next. This is one example, the stories during pandemic just happening last month, how the candidate of migrant workers jumped from the shelter in Malang, East Java, because they facing exploitation even before going abroad, still in Indonesia, still in Malang, one city in East Java, because they facing the agency keeping their cell phone and many things not like exploitation. They no receive employment agreement, etc. and etc. So this is like the sign what how trafficking actually really happening. This is next. This sorry. Next. This is the examples. If you are opening the Facebook and typing lowongan kerja di luar negeri, like job order in abroad, there are so many information about it's very easy how to get job abroad. So this is the we call market for the syndicate to find a victim. Next. This is also the example how it's very easy to finding people recruiting to be Malaysia, Brunei, Singapore, and many destination countries, including in Southeast Asia. Even though we are actually stopping to placing Indonesian migrant workers because of pandemic, so many people still believing with the syndicate. They are they're use this information as a job order. Next. So for migrant care is NGO that formulated in 2004, maybe 15 years ago. We are focusing, beside providing legal aid, we are also preventing trafficking from the village, because village is the first step that migrant workers coming from, and the commitment of the government in the village not really so high, how to understanding about trafficking, how to have the commitment about the protecting migrant workers. So since 2014, migrant care starting to have the initiative we call Desbumi, Desa Peduli Buruh Migran, village for migrant workers care. So this village actually they have a village regulation about migrant workers, anti-trafficking. They allocate the budget for their citizen. For information services for before migrant workers going abroad, and also have the data about migrant workers and empowerment after migrant workers going back to Indonesia. So this village actually already recognized by Indonesian government, and they make so many the same initiative and in thousands of villages in Indonesia. And our initiative, Desbumi, actually recognized by Indonesian government under the National Report of Trafficking, also under the Red Book of IOM, International Labour Organization, that actually Desbumi is a way how to preventing trafficking. Next. So reflecting from a TIP report this year that Jason mentioned it before, actually there are so many things about how the correlation between trafficking and COVID-19 for us, for Indonesia. Actually, we already 13 years in tier 2. And we hope actually Indonesia will improve our effort, our law enforcement, our prevention, our innovation, how to make of course, tier 1, how to against this transnational crime. So we always hope in the when United States of America publishing this report, we always remembering our government. Please make this momentum how to improve our effort. I think this is Jason, and I will very welcoming to the next discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Anise. And I believe that's a rooster in the background. And the rooster is joining all of us, calling people to wake up and do something about human trafficking. So that was a great addition to your presentation. Anise, I have so many follow-up questions for you. I do want to get to Sue, but before I get to Sue, I'll just ask you a couple quick questions, and then we will get to you, Sue. So I just want to make a comment from our audience. I want to add to what you were saying. There are many people who think, well, human trafficking must have gone down because people aren't hiring as much, and the economy has been so impacted by COVID-19. But in many circumstances, it's the exact opposite, because companies are looking for ways to hire cheap workers, and in some cases exploit workers, because they want to either pay no salary or as little salary as possible. So I'm really glad you pointed that out. It's important for the audience to understand that even with COVID, this problem of human trafficking continues, and in some circumstances, it's even worse. So I just wanted to accent that point. I did want to ask you this question. You talked about the strong recruitment efforts that various businesses are going through, nefarious businesses to exploit workers. So many people in Indonesia, Southeast Asia, United States are out of work because of the pandemic, and they're looking for any job opportunity available. What are your tips for people looking at these ads to help them determine, is this a legitimate job? Is this a legal overseas job? Or might I get caught up in some kind of trafficking ring? What should they be looking for within the advertisement?
Yeah, actually, many people around the world, including from Indonesia, are facing the very difficult situation right now since last year. But please be careful about the all information that all of you receive, all of you read in the social media, from your neighbor, from the television, from many sources of the information. Please make sure that you are make the cross check from the official website of the government. We have BPP 2MI on their website. There are very clear which country that already open, which step, which sector, and which mechanism. So it's really different during a pandemic recruitment. Also, we can everyone can check the social media of BP2ME and also Ministry of Manpower. It's so easy. Just cross-check every information and don't believe every information coming that you will get a job very easy and the salary very high. Please don't believe it.
Yeah, we have an expression in English where we say, if it seems too good to be true, it probably isn't true. But sometimes it is. So the point is, you really need to do your research. Don't just take a quick look and then think your dream job is there. Do some research. As Anise said, there are ways to double check these companies, the governments. All the governments throughout Southeast Asia have vehicles for you to check. Is this a legitimate business? Is this a legitimate visa I'm applying for? All of these components. So please, before you consider any kind of job, do a little bit of extra research. All right, Anise, we're going to come back to you, but we're going to switch now over to Sue. She's going to tell us about Liberate and Malaysia. So take it away, Sue.
Hi, thank you, Jason, again. Just a little bit of a background about me. I started the organization about 10 years ago when I was 19 years old. And that was the first time when I was introduced to the issue of human trafficking through a documentary about a little girl in Cambodia, and she was trafficked by her own parents to a brothel, and realized that that was a far more common issue that happened than I was aware. So I think the work that we do in Project Liberate is sort of a direct reflection of what I felt 10 years ago. It was my first time being introduced to the issue. It was really hard to understand, something that is extremely complex, and it also made me feel like this issue is super daunting and impossible to solve. And so I think that's why Project Liberate was formed, is that when we saw that there were CSOs and NGOs working on this issue around the areas of protection and prostitution, which is obviously an extremely important work, there was also a lack of prevention methods or effective communications that can push people to change their mindsets and their behaviors on the issue of trafficking. And that's how Project Liberate was formed, with the idea of complementing existing organizations that are already working on this issue, but really focusing on the communications work and the prevention work to ensure that, you know, people are aware about these issues and people are pushing towards a more positive attitudes when they approach the issue of human trafficking. So just in general, in Malaysia, the issue is actually perceived very poorly by the public because we see a lot of poor treatments and attitudes towards migrant workers, which is majority of who the victims are in Malaysia when we talk about human trafficking. So the work that we do really is to break down what human trafficking is, but even more so, how can we effectively and efficiently shift knowledge, attitudes, and practices, not only among the general public, but also government officials, law and policy makers, decision makers, companies, other stakeholders, is sort of in the realm of what we're doing currently. So in short, I guess you can say that we use creative communications, storytelling, campaignings to challenge norms and to create new pathway for change in the issue. So we specialize in communications for development, and we also believe that the work that we do needs to be impact-driven, evidence-based, and human-centered approaches. So some of the projects that I can talk about is really one that we've launched just yesterday, which is called Advocate on the Road, where we go to high schools to educate children about their rights, and also the issue of human trafficking. And so, we've collaborated with UNICEF, we've collaborated with the Ministry of Education, where, yesterday they've acknowledged that this is going to be part of the module of what they will teach secondary school students, which is really exciting because this is something that, we've been pushing for the past few years. And it's really coming to sort of a progressive stage at this point with the Ministry of Education to bring education not only to school children among Malaysians, but also stateless children and also refugee children to make sure that their rights, they understand their rights, they understand the situation of human trafficking so that they can prevent themselves to be less vulnerable towards the issue. So yeah, just that's just a little bit of a snapshot of what we do, and yeah.
So thank you so much. That high school program sounds so exciting. Who's volunteering? Who's doing the speaking for that program?
We have trainers that we hire that do, it's really an interactive and an engaging session. You go through really just the very simple concept of what human trafficking is, but you also go through, situations of what migrant workers go through on a daily basis in Malaysia, so that Malaysian students also can empathize towards them and be the eyes and ears of the situation. But with children that are stateless or refugee children, we also teach them how to be aware of the signs. So like what Anis was mentioning, these kind of Facebook posts, especially during the pandemic, especially during COVID-19 situation, it has heightened even more, obviously, because their parents will lose their jobs. They are being pushed to work at a very young age. And so understanding the concept of human trafficking is definitely really hard to grasp. And so, these modules are really catered towards that, to make sure that, what Anis was mentioning about the Facebook post, how can you identify what is fake and what is real, making them more resilient towards the situation is really what we do.
Right. Well, I hope that you keep in contact with the U.S. mission to ASEAN, as well as the U.S. mission to Malaysia, so that we can find out how this program goes and what kind of successes you have. And perhaps we'll have a follow-up interview in a few months and you'll tell us how the program is proceeding. I do want to take a step back and follow up with what Sue was saying for the audience. So the U.S. mission, the U.S. government has a program called YSEALI, which is the Young Southeast Asian Leaders Initiative. And this is a network right now. We have more than 150,000 members throughout Southeast Asia. And these are people who are passionate about all kinds of topics. So if you have a topic such as human trafficking and you think, oh, it's so daunting, I can't succeed, I can't fix this problem on my own. Well, you're not on your own. There are a lot of people who want to solve this problem and other problems. So I encourage you, if you're not a member of YSEALI already, this is for any 18 to 35-year-old throughout Southeast Asia. Join us, tell us what issue you're passionate about, and we can link you to a peer group. If it's human trafficking, we can connect you to Anise and Sue. If it's something else, we can link you together. So please join YSEALI and push for your passion, because we can't solve it on our own. We have to work together as a group. So in solving this problem, Sue mentioned something interesting, and I want to ask this of both Sue and Anise. So let's say you are living and you're working in your community, and you have a sense that someone in a business is the victim of human trafficking. What can you do as an individual in that community? Is there someone in the government you can contact, or maybe they should contact your groups? But what would you recommend for that individual who, again, suspects that he or she knows someone who is a victim of human trafficking? Let's start with Anise.
Yeah, thank you, Jason. They can contact us, Migrant Care, or so many NGOs here in Indonesia that focusing in facilitating victims of trafficking in Indonesia to have their rights, to have justice. But it's easy also to keep contact with the Indonesian government from the village level. It's easy now. Just contact the village, and then village will connect to the government in the district level, and facilitating how to get their rights, how to ensure what the next step that should do if identify a suspect to be a victim of trafficking. So it's the important. So the contact can contact NGOs, government. It's really easy. Can contact directly. Can contact through social media, and it's easy to open our website, migrantcare.net, and also so many information there.
That's great, Anise. And Sue?
Yep. So just like what Anise was mentioning as well, something that you can do is to contact the NGOs that are working on this field. In Malaysia, we have Tenaga Nita, that is, an amazing organization that does rescue work in Malaysia, and they've been doing it for more than 30 years. That is a point of contact that you can go to. There is also the government helpline number, which is 8000, which you can refer to. One of the things, or one of the flaws that we see in that hotline, is that it only operates in certain hours. So only during working hours from Monday to Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. And so when we have identified that that was an issue or a problem that the government is facing, we actually developed a chatbot for the government, which will be launching tomorrow. So that's really exciting as well, or the 30th of July, which is in conjunction with the World Day Against Trafficking in Persons. But so this chatbot really functions as, it's only available on Facebook right now, which is where most the migrant communities are. And it's on the government agency's Facebook page. So what you can actually find out through that chatbot is that you can report on your case. Let's say, for example, if you do see that there is a potential human trafficking situation that's happening around you, you can report on that, and you can point to the exact location of where this situation is. Besides that, this chatbot also is able to provide audience with a variety of information about human trafficking, because like what we've mentioned is that, and I guess what is one of the problems that we face as well, is that people do not understand what human trafficking is. And so I think it's sometimes really hard to break down a a situation that you see, whether it is human trafficking or not. So that is a way for you to also understand or be educated about the issue. There is also other government agencies that have their own apps, their own helplines. So I think plenty of resources available, but we need to push it out even more and need to be able to highlight that even more.
That's excellent. You know, sometimes I start smiling when I talk to people about this topic, and I think, oh, I shouldn't be smiling because it's such a serious topic. But what I'm smiling about, what makes my heart sing, is that there really are so many people in the United States, in Southeast Asia, that really do care about this issue. There really are a lot of resources and NGOs that really care. So we're all working together to try to make a dent in this very serious problem. The other point that I want to accent that you were saying is that sometimes people are scared to contact the government for any number of reasons. There could be all kinds of reasons. And that's why it's very important for people to be aware that there are NGOs, and many of the NGOs provide a space where people can call and have an anonymous conversation about their suspicions about human trafficking. So if someone is concerned about talking to the government, be aware there are other non-government organizations, other vehicles to try to approach this issue. Now, I do want to talk about another topic, and that is, I want to clarify. So some of the audience could be confused when we're talking about migrant workers. Are we talking about workers who have moved from one country to another with a visa? They've moved legally, or they've had the authority to move to that other country, and then they're being exploited because the job turns out to not be what they expected? Or are we talking about people who were not authorized to move? So a Malaysian moved illegally, was transported against her will towards Indonesia. So when we talk about migrant workers, are we talking about authorized, unauthorized, a mixture of both? If you could clarify that for our audience. Let's start with Anise.
Yeah, actually everyone can migrate abroad from one country to another country. It's legal and refer to the International Convention on the Protection of Migrant Workers and Their Families. Actually, moving or mobilization is the part of the human right. So everyone can move, but ensure that migrant workers also have to understand about the mechanism. Ensure that you do the moving with the legal, with the visa, so the risk will be not so big. Yeah, I can say that actually, legal or not legal, everyone can have the risk to be victim of trafficking. But if we are legal, maybe the mechanism is easier than if we are undocumented. So this is have to be clear. And the second, legal or illegal, actually migrant workers have the same right that state have to make the protection. The sending countries, the transit country, and the receiving country have to protect them under the International Convention on the Protection of Migrant Workers. So no one of migrant workers, both legal or illegal, facing the discrimination, facing the facing the discrimination because of they are undocumented migrant workers. So if you are even you are undocumented migrant workers, you have the right how to get the fair a process from the government in the destination countries, in the transit countries. So make sure you still keeping the contact of the your embassies, like from Indonesia, for example, keep contact the Indonesian embassies, or you can download Indonesian government have the application in the mobile phone. We call I don't know, I forget the name of the application, but in that application, in everywhere, migrant workers, if they are facing emergency situation, just click the emergency button. So it will be help if someday will facing emergency situation or etc.
Thank you, Sue.
Yeah, I think, I echo what Anis is mentioning as well. I do have to say that one misconception that we all have is we often get confused between human trafficking and human smuggling. And that's why, the issue itself, I think personally, it's a really complex one, because human smuggling is where, is the process of people being transported in like an illegal channel, right? And human trafficking happens sort of, it can include that process, but it also can include when you are already in that country of destination. So I guess that's the reason why I feel like there is a lot of misconceptions and a lot of misunderstanding about the issue in terms of human trafficking. And also what Anis has mentioned as well, I think when you have documents, you are less vulnerable, but that does not mean that, you are not going to be trafficked a few years down or whatever it is. There is still that opportunity for traffickers to come and exploit you during your journey in another country. For people who are undocumented, obviously it's a lot, the vulnerability increases, because imagine if, let's say, for example, an agent were to trick someone to Malaysia to work. And when they come to Malaysia, they only find out that they don't have a work permit and they don't have a job here. So they end up being undocumented. They end up not having a job at all. And so they can't go back because of probably financial issues, or they are already here in Malaysia. And so, how can they also find jobs while they are there? So, in that instance, they become more vulnerable, because then people will say, come work for me. I will provide you with all these things. I'll provide you with a good job, good salary. Everything is provided. And then you end up being in a trafficking situation. There's also a lot of instances where students actually do get trafficked to Malaysia as well. So I think that there is an amazing group of journalists in Malaysia that highlights this particular issue that we were talking about, where a lot of agents in Bangladesh, for example, they would get students to come over to Malaysia, and they tell them that, under like a student visa, you can also work. So when they come to Malaysia and they end up being in like a lot of, like, they have a lot of debts because of them paying for like the education fees and things like that, but they end up in a university that looks like a sham. And also they have to work to pay off their debts. And when they work, it's, usually forced labor work. And that's how they get lured into the situation of trafficking in Malaysia. So yeah.
You both illustrated those points so well, and I'm really glad that you made the point that you could be a Vietnamese national living in Ho Chi Minh City and relocate to Hanoi, and a business could traffic you. because there's domestic trafficking. You're right that we normally think of, oh, it has to be a foreigner who is trafficked. And it's not that simple. There's a lot of complexities to this issue in all kinds of scenarios. And I know our audience is starting to think about some of the vulnerabilities that can easily happen to someone. One of our commenters, Sarah, said that many human trafficking victims, their phone is taken away, their access to the internet is taken away, their passports can be taken from them. A lot of times we assume for those people who are traveling that, oh, as long as we have our ID and our phone, we're fine. The point is, those things can be taken away, and that's very scary. And that, of course, is why you have to seek people who can assist you, or you have to look for others that you can assist. You have to talk. There's phone numbers, there's organizations such as yours. If someone does take away your phone, your internet access, and your passport, do whatever you can, get away and find someone who can help you. And that's the solution. Now, I want to ask both of you, are there additional things that we could be doing that our government, our international bodies, the US government, journalists, people, as you look at this tremendous problem, what are some additional areas where some entities could help? What are some of the things that you've thought of? Obviously, your NGOs have stepped up and done things, but are there areas that you'd like to ask either the US government, your own government, journalists? What are some more things we could be doing? Why don't we start with Sue this time? We'll go in the other order. So Sue, why don't you go first this time?
Yeah, and that's really, to me, that's a really tricky, I guess, question to navigate, because there's so much that we can ask for, so many things that can be done. But I think just in general, because our organization works around the issue of perception and also prevention in the issue, one of the things that I think we can do more of, especially with the government, is the collaborative effort that needs to take place with government officials and also with nonprofit organizations or CSOs. I feel that, in the Malaysian context, there has been a lot of collaborations that have taken place where the secretariat that is in charge of this issue has worked really hard to include CSOs in discussions, in conversations revolving around the issue of human trafficking and how can we input certain recommendations to improve on the situation in Malaysia. And I'm not sure if you're aware, but just recently we have collaborated with the government to launch the National Action Plan on the trafficking in persons. And that is, a huge step forward to sort of include CSOs' recommendations and ideas to run these activities for the next 5 years. I think the challenge here would be collaborating with the right stakeholders, collaborating with the right partners to make sure that these activities are taken place effectively and efficiently, so that we can, really put human trafficking as a priority or as a national priority in Malaysia, because as of now, we're not really seeing that yet. And I guess that is also one of the reasons why we were downgraded from tier 2 watch list to tier 3 this year. And that's a really important thing to note is that there is so much more that can be done, but we just need to be more cohesive and we need to plan ourselves a little bit better. I think, human trafficking just in general is an organized crime. It's so organized that it's really complex for us to break down. But unfortunately, among ourselves, among CSOs, among governments, among intergovernments, with other governments as well, it's not as organized or it's not as prioritized as we hope. And so I think, that's the disparity between us and the human traffickers.
Well put. Definitely a lot more that can be done. Anish, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think we invite journalists, many people from university, the youth community, and another one to ensure that how the social media to be optimized, to be maximized, campaign on how trafficking still happening around us, using TikTok, using YouTube, using Facebook, using Twitter, Instagram, and all of the platform of social media, talking about human trafficking, part of our life. So it's very still important to give the understanding to the many people around us. The second one, I think we hope that in the school, institutionally, in the education institution like secondary school, high school, there are a curriculum about trafficking. In some school, there are optional about trafficking, but we hope that will be main curriculum also to give the understanding for the student, because you know the like in Indonesia, the recruiting also through school. So it's very important to give the curriculum about trafficking through school. Few years ago, Migrant Care actually already have the communication with the Ministry of Education. Maybe we need to continue our effort how to ensure that trafficking should be curriculum in the institutional education. The third, I think the innovation. The innovation, it's very important. So many apps that very easy people to use, to access. So we invite many people, youth community, to make the application that make people more understand about trafficking. And the last, I think this is a digital era. Campaigning through digital also very strategic. We call a filmmaker also to make more film about human trafficking, about the success story, about the false story of the victim of trafficking. It's really still strategic for people to easy understanding about trafficking. And for the United States of the government, I think we need the support how to strengthen the capacity of the local government about this issue, because actually the market of the syndicate still happening in the local government, and we know how the capacity, the understanding of the local government official, it's still limited about the trafficking. Yeah.
Well, obviously, one of the reasons that the U.S. government creates this annual trafficking in persons report is because it's very important to us, and many missions are engaged with local governments on this important topic. But there's always more that can be done, absolutely. And I'm really glad you brought up a point that Sue mentioned earlier, the element of education, particularly for secondary students, and that's why I'm so excited about this new program that Sue mentioned that was started yesterday in Malaysia. Many people think of students and they think, oh, students are just focused on their schoolwork. They forget sometimes that many teenagers have to work and study to help their family. Perhaps their parents lost their jobs because of the COVID pandemic, or maybe there's any other range of issues. Or maybe they're starting to think that they want to go to a college or a university and they need money. So it's so easy for them to get swept up into some kind of human trafficking scenario. So to provide that awareness to them, because your typical 15 or 16-year-old is obviously going to be naive about these matters. I certainly was when I was 15, I wouldn't have had a clue. So an educational program is so important at that age. Completely agree. So I want to pause for a moment because I want to talk about some of the special US government programs that we have to develop leaders such as yourself. Let's start with you, Anise. The US government sent you on an international visitor leadership program. Could you please share with our audience a little bit about this IVLP and what you gained from this experience?
Yeah, I am IVLP alumni in 2006, so it's a long time ago. And actually, IVLP alumni in Indonesia, we are right now in processing to make a book about the alumni activities and about what the benefit of the IVLP alumni. And I'm still writing my experience and remembering maybe more than 12 years ago. About trafficking. I'm so interested in that time being part of the IVLP program. The specific one that I still remember right now is how to understand and manage the border area to prevent trafficking and irregular migrant. In that time, we learned about United States and Mexico. And I remember how Indonesia and Malaysia are until now still dealing with this issue, how to manage the border, because every day 1,000 people crossing the border. We have so many borders with Malaysia, land, sea, so it's really big issues. So for me, when I have been in the IVLP program, I learned more about how to manage the border, how the country have to collaborate, to have the commitment to really what's called manage to manage the border, to keep because actually like in Indonesia to Malaysia, mostly they across in the night, right, when the officials sleep. So I learned also the same one in Mexico in the time, in the United States and the time they are climbing the wall, they are running, they are everything. So it's my impression. I'm happy that I'm part of the IVLP program, and I learn more about the law enforcement, because in Indonesia also we are still so many challenging how to enforce the human trafficking here in Indonesia and Malaysia also, because in many experience of migrant care handling the case of trafficking in Malaysia, it's really so difficult how to answer the fair trial in Malaysia, also in Indonesia. So I learned more in United States in the time how the law enforcement on trafficking is really, I think, good, yeah, than Indonesia, then Malaysia, then another countries. Yeah.
Thank you, Anise, and I'm glad you had such a good program. In that case, Anise was talking about her IVLP, which was a 3-week exchange program where you went to the United States and you went to different locations and you learned about how different parts of the United States are approaching the issue of human trafficking and border control and these very complex issues. And you mentioned the date, which I know you probably don't like to mention because, you know, it was a while ago, but it shows that you have been very passionate about this issue for a long time. You really dedicated your career to this. And the US government has dedicated itself to helping people such as yourself to develop your expertise. And we've maintained our ties and we're continuing to work on this and many important issues together. So I'm so glad you got to go on that program. Now, Sue, you also were part of a special US government program through YSEALI. So please tell our audience about your program.
So I went to Indianapolis under the SUSI program, and it was a student program where it was on new media in journalism. So it was really interesting because I think we got to learn about storytelling elements, and how can we use new media to tell stories about issues that we care about, and how like journalism also function or work. And we got to experience in different ways, going to media agencies, going to newspaper publications and things like that, to see how they worked, and also see what is the process, or what the thought process are in terms of how they use storytelling to do the things. And I think that this is really essential to the work that we do, because like I've mentioned earlier, Project Liberate is all about storytelling and campaigns, and definitely the kind of experience that I have experienced in the US was also brought back to reflecting on the organization and how can we improve on the organizations through these different elements that I've learned.
What you said, I really thought very deeply about what you were saying about telling stories, because Anis was saying earlier about 2.2 billion workers being affected by COVID. And we know that millions of people are victims of human trafficking every year. Those numbers are so big, we can't relate to the 2.2 billion people. It's just so overwhelming. But if you hear about a story of a young Cambodian woman, as you mentioned, Sue, then you can relate to that. You can relate to one person. So it's very important that we do have to deal with the tremendous numbers that are involved in human trafficking. We have to be factual, we have to understand the data, but we can't forget, we need to tell the stories of people that are being hurt by this awful scenario. Now, I just want to take one moment, because these are such serious topics, and I just want to ask you a couple fun questions, because we're almost at the end of our hour. And I do want to know if you were able to return to the United States in 2022, and we didn't have all the COVID restrictions and everyone could have fun again. What is a city in the United States or a special location that you would like to visit? Let's start with Anis. If you could go to the United States next year, where would you visit?
I miss New York.
New York City or New York. Yes. Oh, very nice. What's one special thing in New York you'd like to see?
I like the life, 20 hours life.
True.
Yeah, the atmosphere of the life. I like everything in New York, the food, the people, everything.
And Sue, what's a place in the United States you'd like to visit?
Oh, that's so hard, because you guys have so many different states, right, to visit.
It's a huge country.
Yes, probably California, because I've never been there before. So something that I think through TV and all the videos that I've been watching has always raved about California. So I would like to have experienced that. Yeah.
Behind me is the Golden Gate Bridge. That's because I grew up in Northern California. So I always like hearing people want to visit California. Hopefully we'll be there at the same time. All right, this will have to be my last question, but I hope that I will be able to meet you, to travel all over Southeast Asia when some of these COVID restrictions are lifted. So, and many of our Southeast Asian audiences would like to see more places. So Anis, what is a special place in Indonesia that Americans or Southeast Asians should visit, should see?
I think Labuan Bajo in East Nusa Tenggara. It's very beautiful. And Papua, of course.
And Papua, of course. And Sue, what's a place in Malaysia that we must visit?
I think anywhere in Sabah or Sarawak would be an amazing location to be visiting. I personally only been there like once or twice, but the experience there was really amazing. I think that everyone should at least go there and visit.
Well, fantastic. Well, now that we know each other so well, when I'm planning my trips, I'm going to reach out to you and you're going to give me more tips. I want to thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your concerns about this very, very important issue. Thank you so much to our audience and all the people who have discovered this program after it was recorded. Thank you for joining us. We're all very, very concerned about human trafficking and we want to do more about it. And there are things that we can do. And that's what we've discussed today. There are specific things that we can do to make a difference. So thank you so much to my angels of the day. You really are doing wonderful work for the world. Thanks for making such a contribution to making the world a better place. So thank you, Anise, and thank you, Sue. And thanks to our audience for joining us for this special episode of Alumni Talks. Stay in touch with us, click subscribe, click like, watch our other programs, stay in touch, write us, join YSEALI. Thank you so much. Until the next time, take care.